Hello, Dr. Silva. This is Zara and Temiloluwa's Integrative Video Lecture Project. So the title of our project is The Equilibrium Theory of Island Biogeography provides the framework to study the effects of habitat fragmentation on fauna and flora. The goals of the presentation include highlighting the effects of the degree of isolation of forest patches and islands on species richness, the link between islands and forest areas and species richness, the edge effect, and we will end with some of the solutions to reduce species loss in fragmented habitats. I will start with a brief definition of our two main topics. So the island biogeography theory, which was originally proposed by MacArthur and Wilson in 1963, states that the size of an oceanic island and its distance from the mainland or from the source of colonizing species influences the number of species present on that island. The second concept is habitat fragmentation. So habitat fragmentation is when the large continuous area of species habitat becomes reduced and divided into two or more fragments, and often these fragments are isolated from each other. While the island biogeography theory was originally developed to explain species composition or richness on oceanic islands, ecologists studying habitat fragmentation apply the island biogeography theory to terrestrial islands created by habitat fragmentation. The main link between the two concepts is that habitat patches tend to behave like islands. As a result, the same three general patterns that determine community structure and diversity on oceanic islands also apply to habitat patches. The three patterns are that species richness increases as island size increases, species richness decreases as island distance from the mainland increases, and lastly, species turnover rate tend to be higher for smaller islands. According to the species isolation relationship, if two islands are of the same size, the island closest to the mainland will have more species than the more isolated or the more distant island. This is because isolation determines immigration of species. Hence, immigration rates will be higher on the near island than on the far island. This is confirmed by the graphs, which show that as isolation increases or as the distance from the mainland increases, species richness decreases.
The other very important connection between the two main topics is the link between the areas of islands or habitat patches and the species richness. According to the species area relationship, if two islands are the same distance from the mainland, the large island will have more species than the smaller island. This is because size determines extinction of species. As seen from the species area curve, as size of island increases, species richness also increases. This is because extinction rates will be lower on larger islands compared to smaller islands. Habitat fragmentation can occur in nature, but it is also the result of various human activities. Some of the anthropogenic activities that result in terrestrial islands or habitat patches are deforestation, road construction, agriculture, housing development, and so on. However, the main issue with human-caused habitat fragmentation is that it leads to biodiversity loss. This mainly happens due to the edge effect, which refers to the changes in population or community along the boundaries of a habitat. As a habitat becomes fragmented into smaller forest patches or habitat patches, there is a loss of core habitat, which is the inner habitat away from the edge. At the same time, the edge habitat that surrounds the core habitat increases. Consequently, the number of species living in the interior habitat decreases while those living in the edge habitat increases. The diagram illustrates the negative effect of habitat fragmentation on species diversity. On the figure towards the left, there are three different species living in the interior habitat. However, after the habitat is fragmented into two smaller isolated patches, there are only two species in the interior habitat, and therefore one species is lost. In an attempt to reduce species loss in fragmented habitats, conservation biologists have proposed that corridors could help link isolated populations, creating a meta-population that has a lower risk of extinction. Corridors are pieces of habitat that connect two larger patches of habitat that are usually surrounded by non-habitat matrix. Various studies have shown that when two isolated patches are connected by a corridor, plant and animal species richness increases more rapidly compared to unconnected patches. This is because colonization rates are higher while extinction rates are lower when isolated patches are linked through corridors. Therefore, corridors have the potential to improve migration between patches and to increase species richness.